Hey everybody, let's take. Hey folks, let's talk about Turnitin.com. This is a quick synopsis. I have a picture here on the page regarding one of the labs that was submitted, just to give you a visual. There are a couple of other slides as well. The first thing I want to go over is that you have anything where you see the highlighted color on the text here, in this case it's like a salmon color, indicates that the text is identical to another paper. So if you notice, there's a lot of this section of this paper that's completely identical to somebody else's work, and this is what is not appropriate to be submitting. Whether you're doing it to Turnitin.com or not, this does not represent one's own work. For example, if I go here to the materials section, I've always given people permission to just copy the materials. That's not a big deal. I don't need to worry about that. So I'm not going to worry if somebody's materials section looks identical to another paper. And which paper would that be? Well, if you notice, there's these number ones here or whatever. You'll see these numbers, and that indicates which source was used to compare this paper to. The number one source is the source that was first used and to which the paper matches in the greatest amount. So for this particular example, there's one paper, another student paper, that is almost completely identical to this student's paper, and that's not okay. All right, this is an example of what I don't want to see. Now, it's not the materials so much, it's this section, it's the procedure. This is what is always supposed to be absolutely in your own words, and as you can see here, there is not a single word that is in this person's own words. Okay, the whole thing has been copied. And I want to be very clear that you need to follow the directions. What happens in science class versus what happens in history versus what happens in English, it's all different. Each class has different requirements for homework, but whenever you're submitting papers, if they become too similar, I don't care what class you're in, it's not appropriate, and it's considered plagiarism and cheating. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So this is another example. Again, we have a couple of sections here, neither of which should be copied. This again up here was in the procedure section. Again, it's word for word. That should never happen. You need to be putting things in your own words. Change the sentences around. Look at what the procedure is talking about, and then type it out in what you think would be an appropriate series of words. It might just be a few sentences, but make them your own sentences. Now here's another problem, observations and data. People say, well, what if I'm the recorder in a lab and I'm sending my observations to other lab members? I'm like, that's great. However, if you notice again, this source, people should not just be copying word for word what you are sending them and putting it in their lab. They need to say, okay, the observations that my lab partner sent to me should be used to cue my memory as to what happened because I was there. And I remember, for example, if we go down here, that the aluminum foil in the copper chloride solution, it turned that rusty brown color, etc. You need to then say, okay, it's a reminder of what I saw. I need to write it in my own words. If some of the words are the same here and there, that's fine. But if you notice, big swaths here are completely identical. It's too much identical to another paper. Again, here's another paper. It shouldn't be too hard to see that, once again, I'm not going to be too concerned with the materials. This is okay. Okay, if all you're doing is copying the material section, I'm not worried about that. But this down here, all right, is not okay. All right, you're supposed to be doing this in your own words, and what I see here is a complete lack of somebody doing any of this in your own words. Ready? Here's exactly what is in this person's own words. That, and that. Those are the only things that are in that person's own words, ostensibly, and that doesn't mean anything. So discussions, observations, procedures, all of these things need to show up in your own words, and it depends on the assignment. If everyone was required to do the same table for a lab, for example, and everyone turns in the same table, obviously that is fine. But you need to understand what the assignment is asking, and in general, in labs and whatnot, there are sections, most of which the procedures and the discussions and your observations and post-lab questions, these are all things that need to be mostly in your own words.